welcome my Executive Mayor, Geordin Hill-Lewis. Geordin, very welcome to...
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Good to be here.
When I invited him, I told him there would be 2 decent events in Cape Town, besides all the things he organizes. The one is the Investec Art Fair, but the real one is the Taking Stock Roadshow. And thank you for making it here and being with us this morning. And as Sanjeev said, your support for our business over the years has been just wonderful, and we thank you, and we hope we can continue to deliver for you. We're going to give it our best shot. But this morning, I am exposing you to someone you know, but who, and I have the privilege of meeting many interesting people. I must say it's someone who absolutely inspires. I've only had the opportunity, besides a telephone call or so, of having one breakfast with him, and it was an amazing experience. So, Geordin, allow me just to say a few introductory words before you tell us a bit about yourself. Can you believe it? He is 37 years old, and look what he does, and look what he runs. That shows the power of youth and the importance of talent. But he's not a Cape Townian, which is quite shocking, because as a Cape Townian, everyone's foreign unless they're about 100 and have been here for about 50 years or lived for 100 years. He was born in the Southern Cape, Plet, before it was so fancy. Then he came to Cape Town, grew up in Edgemead, went to school there. You still live there?
That's right here.
It's amazing. So you're a real, and then I'm not going to tell the story, but he's a very well-educated person. Tell us a little bit about what you did after school and how you got into the game you're in.
When you grow up in a single-parent household, I'm sure there's lots of people here who've grown up with single moms, and the primary concern is financial security. Yeah. So my mom said to me, "You can study anything you want." The Henry Ford version of study choice. You can study anything you want so long as it's medicine, law, or accounting. And those were my options. I didn't really like either of those. I started out in accounting, lasted about 6 months. I worked for PwC.
You had a personality.
Yeah.
But you didn't do actuarial studies like most of the guys of Sanjeev.
You've just lost some accounting
I
friends
know,
in the room.
very good accounting friends. They all have personalities. I'm married to one.
I actually worked for PwC for a while, but anyway, then I had to have a tough conversation, and I switched to an economics degree, undergrad degree, and then I did a PPE, which is Politics, Philosophy, and Economics, postgrad here at UCT, the best university in the world.
Oh, that's an issue, but we'll come there later.
And then a little bit later, I went to the University of London, SOAS, to do a master's in finance.
Brilliant. And then you've always been involved in student politics, and then you kind of early on. How did you get into the DA?
I actually joined in high school already. Like so many people, influential teachers made a big difference in my life, and I had an amazing history teacher, an amazing English literature teacher, and I was very, very interested in debates. I was quite a precocious youngster. I would often get into debates with the teachers in class. I was a member of the debating club, and I think must have been around about grade 10, if I remember correctly, maybe even grade 9. My teacher came and gave me a copy of Alan Paton, Cry the Beloved Country.
What a book.
And when I started to read that book, it was kind of like an explosion for a young mind about what was really going on in South Africa. And then I started to read just voraciously about South African politics, South African history. I read all the Alistair Sparks books and Rian Malan. And those were very formational books in my teenage years. And I just got so fascinated by how South Africa had arrived to this point. I had no memory of apartheid. Of course, I was 6 or 7, I think, 7 maybe, in 1994. And so how South Africa got to this point and where to from here. And so that's what got me really interested in politics in high school already.
Fascinating. I just want to share something with people here. If you have a grandchild, not that I think you're old, but if you have a grandchild, buy a copy of Cry the Beloved Country. Just leave it. When he or she is old enough, give it to them to read.
Yes.
It is a transformational book, and then you start them. You have to educate people about the apartheid years to understand South Africa today. And I was fortunate to have been around a student in the 80s at the best university in South Africa, not the highest rated.
You at UCT?
No. I was a Marty.
Oh.
I was a Marty. But UCT is a very good. My dad went to UCT.
Yeah.
But I also did a bit of economics.
Not going to bring up.
I was there as well. Yeah. We're going to have a long conversation about that.
Is ek veilig hier?
Yeah. He was watch out. It comes after hours. But
Die naguile. What was it?
die nachtligte, but you're not supposed to know they exist. And anyway, the decade of the 80s, to have lived it in those books of Sparks and others you've read, to have lived it and shared it just is an amazing understanding. Also the perspective that this country actually has a future. Because we don't know. Hulle weet nie wat ons weet nie. We don't know where we were. And we often complain today, we do not know on the precipice on which we lived at that point in time. So I'll come back to you on that. But tell me a little bit about your political career and how you got to city politics. Or tell us.
I did not intend to, so I loved debating. I trained basically as an economist.
Investec really missed it those days. I wish they'd hired you, but we didn't.
And, the policy space was really my forte and my passion. So Parliament was like picture perfect for me. I really loved first working as an economics researcher in Parliament. And a kind of speechwriter, and did various things in the policy and research space, and then ran for office and was elected, as you said, and loved that debating space. It was very much up my alley. But after doing it for a while, I was getting more and more concerned about South Africa. More and more concerned. I then, in the interim, also had a child, which really changes your perspective. Became a father, and you start to really. In those years before COVID, and then just as lockdown happened, and you just see the economy kind of, we could see there on those graphs what happened to the markets, you start to really think, is this a place where my young daughter can grow up with a future of opportunity? And then I realized I've got to get out of a space where I'm just doing debating, because as much as I enjoy the jousting, the verbal jousting of Parliament, and the portfolio committee, you're not having enough impact. And I'm really driven by that sense of having a meaningful impact. And so I started to reassess my own career and think either I must go and go into the business world where you can really have impact through investment and employing people and getting people out of poverty, or you've got to find a niche for yourself in government where you can have serious impact. And that is where the cogs started to turn about maybe I should run to be mayor. And it was probably a 2-year thought process, all in all. And I started thinking about it and doing a huge amount of reading on city government and just trying to basically teach myself. Before I told anyone, I hadn't even told my wife at that stage that this is my plan, because I knew that was going to be a difficult conversation.
It's always a difficult conversation. Yeah. Jeremy's getting married now. Joy is here. Congratulations. Can we just cheer Jeremy quickly? He took a long time, but he got a wonderful wife. But Jeremy, you always have to think it through properly before you ask your wife. Exactly. Otherwise, it doesn't fly, okay?
Write your list.
So wise mayor.
So I had done a huge amount of research and reading, and the more that I actually read about it and thought about it, the more I realized cities in South Africa are the absolute centers of where government actually happens. It's not really at the provincial government level, and of course there's massive levers at a national level, but politically there was no prospect of me being in national government at that time. So I decided I'm going to go for it, and it's been a wonderful 2 years and 2 months now, thoroughly enjoying the opportunity.
We as Cape Townians are immensely thankful for your contribution and your leadership and what you're doing there. So let's just give the mayor a hand anyway. And so when you look at Cape Town and you plan ahead, because you're obviously thinking decades ahead, not years, which cities in the world do you learn from, and what is your vision for Cape Town?
Let me say what my short and medium-term vision for Cape Town is, because I think that's more important for South Africa right now. Then I'll talk about the long-term vision. South Africa desperately needs an example that the country that we envisioned and hoped for in the late 90s and early 2000s is still achievable, because there was so much optimism about the future of our country in the early 2000s, and sadly a lot of that has dissipated over this intervening decade and a half or 2 decades, and we all know the reasons for that. I don't need to go into those here, but I believe too much in the future of South Africa, and am too passionate about the future of our country to accept that everyone should just accept that is our future. That can't be our future. So we have to have a few living, breathing examples in our country that you can still make progress over difficult problems. That's not to say that you have this kind of perfect utopia where every problem is solved, like Denmark or something.
Very boring there.
Where nothing ever happens and there's no problems. And we have serious, major problems, and we will have them for many years to come. But you have to be able to make progress in those problems. You can't keep moving backwards. Yeah. If you're moving backwards, that's a big problem. Your first presenter said that you must follow the trend lines. That's exactly right. Your trend lines have been moving consistently in the wrong direction, and we want to show that you can move the trend lines upwards. That is really important for Cape Town and really important for South Africa. So that's basically our short-term and medium-term vision, is to demonstrate to every South African that you need not give up on the idea of the new South Africa circa early 2000s or late 1990s. Then for the long term, of course, cities around the world are the engines of economic growth. For the last 300 years or longer, they have continued to attract more and more people, and they have grown bigger and larger, and they grow up these enormous economies. We were just talking earlier about the size of the Manhattan economy. It's bigger than
Russia,
bigger than the entire Russian economy.
Slightly smaller than India and the UK. Yeah. Slightly.
So cities are major engines of growth, and I want to make the decisions now that will stand Cape Town in good stead in 100 years' time. When Cape Town will be 10 times the size. Imagine a Cape Town of 50 million people. But that is definitely going to happen. Probably after, don't worry, after all of us are long gone. But that is going to happen. And I just want to make sure that we can try to think with a very long-term framework and say, what are the right decisions now to prepare the city for that future as best we can?
Thank you. That's and are there cities which inspire you, which have struggled with similar? I mean, in 2010 we brought the sort of Singapore. Now they're all retired now, but the original Singapore team here.
Amazing.
And there was a gentleman sitting quietly on the side, and he asked Trevor Manuel the question. He said, "Mr. Minister, do you have enough water?" Trevor went on about human rights and all sorts of political things and fiscal discipline. He said, Mr. Manuel, do you have enough water?" And it was a very, very prescient question of someone who knew. They built a city, they projected the growth, they had a problem in Singapore. So there are places which have seen the movie.
Yes.
Is there anyone who's inspired you or not? Or who, a city which you think we can learn, not to model Cape Town, because Cape Town is not modelable, it's unique, but is there anything that you think...
So we often look to the super successful cities of the developed world. I think that we have more to learn from cities that share some of our context. Our context is not that unique. I mean, Cape Town is uniquely beautiful, but there's lots of cities that have dealt with similar poverty, similar in-migration and rapid urbanization. So I'm super impressed with the leadership of Delhi and Mumbai, for example, where they have built enormous cities. They've improved living conditions for those in what they call slum conditions. I look to Manila and Jakarta, really impressive city governments that are dealing with very similar contexts.
I think that point you make now is so important. We talk about the multipolar world. And we live currently in this US-dominated, everything. They appropriate all the capital in the world. All the market cap has been created there, Magnificent Seven, all that. Actually, if you look through, there is so much talent coming for their lunch from around the world. And I'm in no way I'm anti-American. I don't really agree with our government's approach to the US. I think you've got to have a good relationship with them. But it's not the only game in town. And the developed world is clearly not. So when you think about, opportunities, about economic linkages and that, these places are going to be massive and they're going to dominate. The world economy is already, the center of gravity is east of here already. And it's going further in spite of US-China issues. And so that's a very insightful point.
But just earlier, I mean, the most powerful motive force of history is actually demography. The presenter was making the point, pay attention to demography. Demography really does define most macro trends over decades. And already, or very soon, 1 in 3 people in the world is going to be either Indian or Chinese. And those populations are, certainly the Indian population is still growing rapidly. And for me, there's so much to learn out of the Indian example. I'm reading a lot about India and I'm just fascinated by those enormous megacities and how they've been able to, again, there's still huge problems. And they will be for a long time, but they've been able to make progress in the right direction. I think we can learn a lot from that.
Exactly. Demography is destiny, and the other part is geography, and we're sitting in the middle. We are well positioned. This country actually doesn't need to be a loser. So what's your vision for South Africa? They asked me yesterday on 702, and that wasn't anticipated. No one told me they were going to ask, and I don't know what I said. I haven't listened to it. But it's quite something that makes you think, okay, well, what are the key things we need to do to get this country back on track and change the trend line?
So the first thing is, I think we have to have a clear, simple, national mission that every one of us can understand and express in a few sentences. And we do not have that. Maybe we had that once, but if I ask this audience to tell me what is South Africa's national mission, I think very few of us would be able to express it. And to my mind, there should only be one national mission, and that is to grow our economy fast enough to get people out of poverty. Because our society is not sustainable with the current levels of poverty and unemployment that we have. There's a future sustainability question. You can't have 60% plus youth unemployment forever. So to my mind, our vision and mission should be do everything and anything it takes, mobilize the whole of society, unite the whole country behind this simple goal to grow our economy meaningfully faster so that we can get people out of poverty and into work. If we do that and focus everything on that, and importantly, take every decision through that lens, does this decision help pursue the goal of faster economic growth to get people out of poverty? If not, postpone. We'll deal with it in a decade's time. If it does, pursue it now with real rigor and vigor. I think that would really help a lot. if people have a sense that their future is going to be better, that they really can build a better life for themselves and for their kids, people start to come towards the center. They start to help one another. They start to share. They start to care about one another. Everything goes better in society. But when people feel that they don't have a better future, that they have to scrabble just to survive and scrape, they start to get pushed away from one another, towards the outskirts of society, towards the fringes, and they start to become much more susceptible to radical messaging. And that is what you're seeing really in South Africa at the moment, and in many world politics at the moment.
Very, very astute answer in the sense that you rally around one objective. You know, why did Barack Obama not make an impact on the world? I think he had 20 or 30 objectives because he was such a talented president, and actually we can't remember what he did. We can't remember his achievements. And I think that's the key point. One single objective for South Africans. And in a business, it's the same. If you have too many objectives, you fail. So coming back to the sort of down and dirty implementation, Cape Town is the beneficiary of significant, one of the reasons your Cape Town economy grows, and there's a Nedbank investment report this week out on government investment excluding SOE investment, which I said to the mayor, SOE investment is disinvestment because all the money is being wasted or stolen. But government investment, Cape Town attracts, last year, and there was a very small number, the total number, but attracted 60% of all, and that includes local government. So you are getting investment, you're getting, as a consequence, influx of people. How do we cope in a formal city environment for which most of us live in, with the massive growth in the informal side of the city, and what are your ideas about that?
Now, that's a massive challenge, but it's probably the central biggest challenge to any city's sustainability in the developing world is how you deal with burgeoning informality. I think I made a comment recently on a interview which went viral because the interviewer asked me how long is it going to take to deal with shacks in South Africa, and I said, it's still going to be here for a very, very long time, our whole lifetime. And people were very upset that I said that, but that is undoubtedly the truth. Yeah. And one of the ways that we have identified to try and deal with informality in Cape Town much faster, the first thing is that you cannot rely on government housing programs. Those are drawing rapidly to a close because the government has a fiscal crisis. And you can just see that in housing allocations over the last decade. They've been tapering for a decade. So you have to unlock private capital. And there's a market failure, massive market failure in the housing market, in that private capital does not deliver affordable accommodation at the requisite scale. So I've tried to see in the city, how do we try to address that market failure? What can we do as a city government to address that market failure and unlock private capital investment? And we have a program to incentivize and encourage what we call micro-developers. It's based on some great work that the CDE has done, the Center for Development Enterprise. Yes. Yeah, unbelievable, brilliant work. And we've basically taken that work and said, can we apply this in Cape Town and see whether it works? And I think we are going to have an absolute boom in the next few years in private capital addressing itself and investing in the micro-development affordable housing space. And if we can achieve that, it can become a proper prototype for how to actually deal with informality in South Africa. Because the unfortunate secret of informality is that most people, let me phrase it like this, there are hundreds of thousands of people in Cape Town who have a job, who have a reasonable income, but cannot find any affordable accommodation on the rental market. So they are forced to live in a shack, even though they have employment.
Yes, yes.
And some of them pay expensive rent for a shack.
Yes.
So if you can address that market failure, you can remove literally hundreds of thousands of people from informality. And so that's what we're trying to do. And I think it's really, it's one of the most exciting aspects actually of the city's work currently. I'm really excited about it. And we'll see how that private capital unlocks in the months ahead. We're right at the point now where some of that investment's going to flow. And if it achieves the scale that I think is possible, it'll be an absolute prototype for the country.
And I think we all in the retirement game need to think how we do that bit of intergenerational investing which can get a return. So one of the big themes for 91 this year is to say, where can we, in an intelligent way and in a productive way, finance the kind of infrastructure South Africa needs with its own savings and make a return for the investors. So there's that blended partnership with either local or national government, and we just need to do it. It's if we don't do it, you're going to end up with the Anton Rupert point that you can't sleep when your neighbor is hungry. It's just not possible, and I think that's our challenge collectively. But let me switch tack. I mean, we can see you're alive and open to the real issues we face, but also turning them into opportunities. Tell us about Geordin Hill-Lewis, the person. What do you do when you're not executive mayor of Cape Town? The one hour a week or so.
Yes, exactly, yeah. So the greatest kind of pressure I feel is to make sure that I'm also a good dad, father, and husband. And the commitment that I made to my family when I took on this job is that, I would put in place the boundaries to make sure that that's the case. So when I get free time, I try to spend it with the family, which I love doing. It's super relaxing and takes away all the pressures of the world. I'll just tell you one thing because you referred to Taylor Swift. My daughter, who's 8, about 2 weeks ago, this is 2 weeks ago, she says to me, "Dad, I just want you to know that you won't be a good mayor unless you get Taylor Swift to Cape Town."
Smart kid.
I'm doomed. I don't know if you can help me, Hendrik, but I'm absolutely doomed. So I just try and spend as much time as possible at home. I enjoy reading, as you can hear. I love to relax with a good book, and I love our favorite holiday spot, and we try and get there at least once a year. It's getting more and more difficult to do so, but we absolutely love the Bushveld. To go to the Kruger is just an amazing relaxation place. There's nowhere else like it anywhere in the world. I can guarantee you that. Exactly. And because it's mainly a Cape Town audience, I'll say this, I often find that not enough Cape Townians have experienced the Kruger. We have a beautiful city, but you must please experience the Kruger in your life and take your kids there.
That's absolutely true. In the bush gives you perspective. But I think we've got to just talking to the audience here. How can we be relevant in supporting and I'm not talking party political stuff, supporting your efforts to build the best city in the world? It's already the best, but opening the margin against other cities. How can we be relevant to you, either in our wards and where we live, or in various projects that you take seriously? Because I would mention one thing which I didn't mention to you before. I'm concerned in this city full of gangsterism about safety of people like you, people around you, and I think we should be ahead of the game, not let anything nasty happen. But beyond safety and security, what can we do to be supportive as a group?
That's a great question, Hendrik, and I get it from time to time, and it's always hard to know the answer to this, because I feel like, if you're being a good citizen, if you're, contributing positively to your context, whatever your context is, many of you are building businesses, employing people, I feel like you're already contributing positively. That's what we should all do. Let's just all do our best in our own contexts, and if all of us did that, the country would really work. So I feel like you already do enough. Oh, and pay your municipal accounts. That's very, very, very important. Very, very important. But you know, I just think being engaged citizens, keeping tabs on what's happening in the city and in the country, speaking to your networks, importantly global networks, about what's happening in Cape Town, and making sure that people don't only get one message about South Africa. That is really, really important, because unfortunately so much of the international focus on South Africa has been negative, and people are not aware that this is not just a homogeneous story. There's lots of good things happening in South Africa. Cape Town is one of them, but there are others as well. And to tell that story in all of your networks, because everyone here is very connected people, that you'll be amazed at the compound impact of that over time.
So true, because the communication of the story, we get bored of our own story. Actually, so many people haven't, and I'm just going to share one thing as we close. We're bringing together later this year. We're bringing between 10 and 15 trillion dollars of asset owner money, so asset owners who control those assets, to Cape Town. 2/3 of those CEOs and CIOs have never been to Cape Town. Ask some really naive questions about it when we said, and I won't tell you how, but we kind of got them to agree to come. It's really interesting. We mustn't get bored of our own story, and that's why Rassie was right to make another video or Netflix series on another Bok victory, because you have to tell the story again. So let's take that away and help you tell the story, but also help you implement. And thank you very much. You've got a big group of people willing to support you. Call on us whenever you need to. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Geordin.
Thank you.
It's a privilege.
Thank you.